Hey everyone, it's Desiree, and I am here with day 9 of my 2018 Christmas series. So for this one, we are going to feature Simon Says stamp, and specifically one of their background stamps. So you can see from just using this, we're going to get 2 different looks using minimal supplies. Okay, you don't need everything pulled out. And there's some alternatives to some of the tools that I use as well. So those are the 2 pieces of cardstock. That's actually Night of Navy and Pool Party by Stampin' Up. And the background stamp is from their, it's a new release, or recent I should say, called Outline Snowflakes. So you would think when you would look at this, there's a lot of things you can do with this background stamp. For right now, what I'm choosing to do for both panels, I am going to heat emboss. So just your Versamark ink and an embossing powder. So for the dark blue, I'm going to be using white. Now the white that I use, it's actually called Snow, and it's by Recollections. And I am going to stamp this a couple times just to make sure that I have a good impression. Now, with my stamp positioner, to get pressure, I like to use a rag. I feel like my hand sticks on the plastic. It's very odd, I know. But I do use a rag so that I can put that pressure down so that I can have an even stamp. I'm going to now coat this. Now, I know I have a plastic container for this, but yeah, I just grabbed a piece of paper because, you know, let's just dump it down there and not worry about it going back into the container because, yeah, it won't. So, for the Pool Party cardstock that I'm using, I'm going to emboss again. Now, this time when I emboss, however, I'm going to use gold. And it is my Recollections gold, I believe. Let me think. Yes. Okay. Again, we're going to put the impression onto the cardstock. And again, I actually stamped this one 3 times. There was one section that I just couldn't get the pressure down on. But that's okay. You know, we keep stamping until we make sure. And yes, this is my gold from Recollections as well. Doing the same thing. When you have a background and it takes just so much space, I will just still grab a piece of paper, just dump it down on there. It's just easier then to put it back into the container. Got a big wide area. So once they are heat set, we are set to go. So again, we already have 2 different looks. We have the bold with the navy blue and the white. And then we have a softer look with the Pool Party and the gold. I use a clean, notice I said clean, microfiber cloth to lift up the residue for my anti-static tool. And I think it does great. So the only other thing that I need for this card is a white colored pencil. It could be a Prismacolor, it could be a Crayola, it could be a crayon, it could be the Faber-Castell that I'm using. Something very simple, but you just need white. You could use a white gel pen. But all I'm doing is, for right now, I'm going in all of the circles that are outside of the snowflakes. I'm coloring down on one side of them. And then what I'm bringing in is I'm bringing in a colorless blender, and Prismacolor has that. So I have tons of these things. This is what I use to blend. If I'm not using the colored pencils themselves, I'm using this. Now this technically is a colored pencil, that colorless blender. It's literally, it just has no color. Keep in mind that when you use it on a colored pencil, it will pick up that color to move it. So if, let's say, you've blended shades of purples and blues and you're about to go into yellows and whites, you do want to make sure that you just scribble the point onto a scratch piece of paper so that you can clean it like we would with our like the Dove blenders or something like that. So, you know, or the stumps that we use. So keep that in mind. You do need to clean that depending upon which colors you're going through. Okay, so back to the card. So what we're doing now is I'm just looking at areas of each of the snowflakes to color in. And I'm going into the center, and then I'm using that colorless blender to pull it out towards the edge. So I don't want to color in the entire snowflake. I don't want it to be solid. I just want the snowflakes to stand out and to be, each one to be unique in some way, so that it's not just the outline that you're seeing, so to speak. So as I'm going through, some of them have diamond shapes. Some of the areas are going to be darker than others because I am trying to get that shaded look as well. So for others, what a lot of them are is where I just start at the center and I'm just pulling out along the lines. And you can see that the colorless blender, especially on that very large snowflake there, it will pull it for some time. I mean, I was able to just stay in the center, but I was able to pull that color out to the edge because I have a difference in the cardstock. That's how I know. I see more white. So that's what we did for the first one. Now we're going to set that aside and we're going to work on this one. Now for this one, I'm going to do some blending. I'm not going to use a mini blender. Now I am going to pull in my Nouveau brushes. I love these blending brushes. As you keep using them, they get better. Now I just want to go on the bottom. Now because I'm going over the embossed area, I realized that there was an area that didn't get embossed, which is fine, but you can see it. It's kind of in the center, but because I'm moving so fast, you're not able to catch it, which is fine. That's not a problem. I'm not going to stress over it, but I just wanted a little bit of color at the bottom. Now, let's say you don't have those brushes. That's fine too. You don't have to use them. I just get sponges. And I will, excuse me, I had to sneeze. You could use makeup sponges. These are just regular sponges that I cut up. And then I fold in half. And then I put a piece of paper on it so I can hold it just to get it a little bit deeper. This sponge I actually purchased from Stampin' Up. You can get like 3 of them for like, I think $3 or something like that. And I quarter them. I get 6 pieces out of 1 sponge. So now that I have my dark at the bottom, of course, I saw the video that Jennifer McGuire did, where she used the white pigment ink. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I have to try this. So I put my ink on the one side just to darken it a little bit. I am pulling out a mini blender this time. Now, because this is a dedicated blender that I have for my white pigment. Now, you don't have to use a mini blender. Again, you can use that sponge. You can use a brush. You can use a makeup sponge. But what I did like, not that I ever doubted her, but yes, your cardstock gets lighter at the top. And then as you continue to lighten up the pressure and go over the ink, now you've got that value. And this took no time at all. Do you have to use the white pigment ink? No. No, you do not. You could have just left the ink that you did on the bottom below. That's all you needed to do. Could you have used multiple colors? Absolutely. Could you have just used the white pigment ink? Absolutely. What's wonderful is when you go back and you want to add more ink, just like I'm doing here over the white pigment ink, because it is pigment, it blends beautifully. So you get that soft, chalky look to continue down your stamp. I'm going to pull in a stamp set by Penny Black. It will be listed down below. Again, it is Christmas sentiments, but it had 2 sentiments that were absolutely perfect. So I'm going to use the scrap end of my panels, but the blue one is going to say Frosty Morning, and then the pull is going to say Cold Days, Warm Hearts, I believe. And I'm going to use the same embossing powder that I used for each of the cards to heat set those. So of course the dark blue is going to have the white, and then the pull, excuse me, the pool party is going to have the gold. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Yes, Cold Days, Warm Hearts. Yes, I was right. So because I cannot cut a straight line, and I could not find my, believe it or not, 9-inch paper trimmer. Yes. Yeah, it's a dangerous mess. I'm using my Simon Says banner dies, and this is where I found it. Yes. So I'm going to use my Post-it note trick to hold on to that little piece of cardstock so that I can get a straight line. I want to use the gold metallic paper. That's from my 8x8 paper pad by Tim Holtz of the Metallics, gold and silver. I want that the lighter color to sit on top of that gold. I just want that to have some type of border to it. I'm going to have one for each of my sentiments, actually. For the dark blue, I'm going to actually use a white. I'm going to cut a white strip and put that behind the sentiment so that that can stand out. Again, just to have these things stand out on their own. And I'm just going to make sure that my strips are being cut a 1/2 inch, because that die, the banner die, is 3/8 of an inch around that sentiment. So you can see I kind of have the lighter one centered onto the card, and I'm going to have the darker one going to the right when it comes to the sentiments. Again, same stamp, using minimal supplies to create your backgrounds. Now, because I had that one issue with the embossing powder, because that was my fault, I did pull in a few more. But you can see embossing powder, just ink if you wanted to. I'm prepping my card bases. Now again, these are standard A2 size card bases, so they are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and they are top folding. Now for my frame die, I used my vintage frame by Penny Black. This is my second favorite die. What I liked about it was, while it's very distressed and it reminds me, of course, of a torn edged, what it also reminded me of for this one was frost on a window. So that's why I wanted to come in with my white pigment ink to just go around the edge of this dark panel, just to add some of making it look like frost is coming in around the area. So it's one of your window panes out of your window. So I'm just lighting that lightly around the edges. I'm okay if it gets on my card base. It's white. I'm good with that. And I'm just going to now apply my sentiment. Now this I am going to prop up. I know I wasn't having any dimension going on here, just had some texture. I'm going to prop this up using my foam squares. And I'm going to make sure that it's going to be propped up going all the way across, because I do want it to go from end to end on my card so that it sits up off of my panel. I'm not sure. I think I do the same thing with the gold. So once that's set, that card is done. I'm not going to add anything else. Now, could you add other items to this card? Absolutely. You could add some gems. Yes, my thumb is still at this time being wrapped up because it's extremely ugly. So sorry about that. Yeah, it was a doozy. with what I did, but this one looks better. I'm using my Nouveau adhesive again to apply this down onto my standard A2 size card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it is a top folding still. I'm going to glue this sentiment directly down onto my card, but this time I'm going to place it more towards the top. I do use the grid that's on my mat to make sure that I am putting that straight, but I am also one to just eyeball it as well. I'm okay with that. So those are the two cards. Now, again, as I said, you could add jewels, you could add sequins. So for the lighter one, I am going to pull in my gold Nouveau drops, and I'm just going to add drops here and there. Some of them are going to be along the snowflake. Some of them, a lot of them are just going into the open space, the open circles. Maybe in one of the circles you can see I put 3 to make sure that they were 3 different sizes. But I don't want to, overload it. I just want to have a few that are going across that card. So as always, we have some close-ups of the card or cards that we made today. I hope you did enjoy this, and I hope it gave you some ideas or inspiration for maybe any background stamps that you have, or maybe any individual stamps that you have where you could create your own background stamp. If you should have a positioner, but even if you don't, you can use that acrylic block to create your own background and then just emboss it. If you have any question, leave those down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Also, all the products that I used will be listed down below in the video description if you just wanted to check them out or learn a little bit more about them. But by all means, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and to subscribe to my channel. We have so much coming out in the near future. This is going to continue. Yes, I'm at day 9. This is exciting. Yep. We're going to see if we can make it to the number that I'm looking at. But remember what is most important for me every day. Always be creative.